and welcome to the Scottish Roadscast, a podcast about Scotland's roads, bridges and motorways. I'm Duncan.
And I'm John.
John, how are you?
I'm very, very well. It's good to be back here in the recording studio again,
Good to be back
talking about
podcast.
roads.
Yeah, just the two of us this time.
Just the two of us. But I understand this time we've got a particular topic very, very close to your heart that
Yes.
we're revisiting.
Indeed.
So, tell us what it's going to be.
So we're going to be discussing the A9.
The A9. We have been here before.
We have been here before. We did a two-part podcast about the A9 back in 2020? We did that a little while ago.
Sometime around
back
about
in
that.
the time of the Glasgow Motorway Archive, but we're now the Roadscast, and I thought being the A9 quite topical at the moment, we thought, why don't we go back? But we're not going to be discussing the duelling very much. We're going to be looking into that upgrade that took place between the 1970s and 1980s, where the Perth and Inverness stretch was reconstructed. There's a whole detailed amount of engineering and construction we can go into, and people know about the A9, so we thought, why don't we have another discussion about it?
Yeah, and I'm taking it, and I'm sure you'll cover it. More information has probably come to light since our last one.
Yeah, we have not given up researching. Well, I've not given up researching the A9.
You never do.
I've been looking at this, getting some more information, and we've got, I think, I can safely say, the definitive history of the A9 between Perth and Inverness.
You heard it here first,
so
folks.
I've got lots of paper in front of me to go through, but hopefully this will be quite good. So shall we get on with it?
I'm happy. Straight down to business.
Okay.
Let's go.
So, the A9 between Perth and Inverness. So, the A9, just a bit of background, is the longest trunk road in Scotland, and it's the fifth longest in the UK, and it's 273 miles. So, it starts around about the Falkirk area, and it heads up to Stirling, and that's the non-trunk section.
That's right.
And then the dual carriageway kicks off at Dunblane, and it runs up to Perth, and then it runs for another 100 miles to Inverness, and then another 100 miles north of Inverness up the coast to Thurso, where it finally ends. So it's quite a long road. It's got quite a big history as well, so we thought we'd go into the history as well. So it's the main link from the Central Belt up to the Highlands in the far north, and it's existed for around 500 years, when we can kind of date when road construction kicked off. So the main roads up north from Perth were drove roads. Small tracks. Yeah.
Drove. Like for driving animals.
Driving animals.
That's where that term comes from.
Following the line of least resistance through the passes. Yeah, through the hillside, yeah. Mm-hmm. So the first documented road construction we have up this corridor north of Perth was the military road. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of... there was a Jacobite rising in 1715. There's a whole lot of history going on there. But General George Wade was sent up to provide a bit of military resistance up there, and he constructed forts such as the Ruthven Barracks, that's near King Eusie, and a road system for transporting troops and military vehicles, mostly built. There's a military roads built by the military for the military. Approximately 250 miles of military road was built by General Wade, and then this was greater expanded by Major William Caulfield. So there was lots of new bridges built to cross rivers and streams, and these can actually be seen today as, on the OS maps in particular, as General Wade's Military Road.
Yeah, because you see it, that term used a lot, old military road.
The old military road, yeah.
Yeah, it refers to that. Okay, I'm following. So originally the route, as you say, a drove road. It was used more for agricultural things, and then the military came along and gave this new purpose and done basically an upgrade.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And that carried on for a little bit of time before the Commission for Highland Roads and Bridges was set up. And this was basically a drive to try and improve communication to these far northern areas of Scotland and generally do a bit of road building. This was a commission set up in 1803, and this kind of ended in 1863 when the railways started to kick off, particularly the Perth and Inverness Railway. When that was finished, that's when road travel started to decline.
Okay.
So it gives us a bit of a time frame there. So the engineer in charge was a chap called Thomas Telford, who we've probably heard of.
Never heard of him.
Never heard of Thomas Telford, no. He was the engineer in charge. So he built basically the road from Inverness up to the far north and out to Skye, and all these little roads that are still pretty much followed today. About 900 miles of new road was constructed with over 1,100 bridges. New bridges were built along with the Thomas Telford work.
That is an amazing, even by today's standards, that is a lot of structures.
Yeah. If you go back and listen to the 82 podcast, Thomas Telford built the basic route of the 82 north of Glasgow there. Many are still in use today, which is quite something, really.
What a legacy!
What a legacy, exactly. Who knew? So that was the situation. And in the early 20th century comes along, and in the 1920s, the Ministry of Transport was set up because this thing called the motor car, which you might have heard of, something like that.
You may have discussed it before. Yeah.
That started to become a big thing, and we looked at the road system and went, we're going to have to get something a bit better than this, because we're still kind of using the older roads. So there was a review of all major roads, and this is when the road numbering system was set up.
Yeah, so always get the date of that wrong, but it was at some point in the 20s.
1922 is when there was several revisions of it. It was the 30s when they kind of figured out what they wanted, but it was the 20s when they figured out the 1 to 9 routes, and then they started allocating numbers beyond there. The A9 between Perth and Inverness, that was targeted as, this isn't good quality anymore, we're going to have to do a bit of work to this.
Okay.
The road between Inverness and Blair Athol was fully reconstructed to an average width of about 18 foot to provide a consistent width, so 2 cars can pass comfortably. 40 miles of this was new construction, and 38 was reconstruction of the Telford Road.
Okay.
So it made it about 70 odd miles. Now, we have some names here of some famous people who are involved, and I thought it would be good to mention these folks. So the Director General of Roads at the time of this upgrade was Sir Henry Maybury. You may have heard of in some of the road documents. The Chief Engineer was Major Robert Bruce, who, again, back to our A82 podcast, he was in charge of the reconstruction north of Ballachulish to Inverness.
All right, so he's involved in that, and then also now involved in the A9.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we did the A9. A9 came first. We've done it in a funny order, but there we go.
Okay.
The consulting engineer for the bridges was Sir Evan Owen Williams. So he was quite pioneering with the use of concrete structures. So there's a lot of large concrete bridges along here. And the consulting architects for the bridges were Sir John Simpson and Maxwell Ayrton.
Okay.
So they came up with these sort of interesting hexagonal designs. 4 large reinforced concrete bridges were built at Tomatin, Carbridge, Newtonmore, and Dallameen. Carbridge was replaced in 1974. So a wee side note there.
Okay.
But many of these are still around today, so you can have a look at them. The Tomatin Bridge is a fine example of this kind of 20s architecture. Very, very over-designed bridges. Very impressive.
Something very much of its time.
Yeah.
Up there, isn't there a quite spectacular bit where you see 3 bridges all together? I think the railway, the A9, and
Dallameen.
Yeah.
Dallameen, yeah, just up there. And did you know that concrete rafts were built on the road between Carbridge and Tomatin due to the soft ground at the Slough summit?
I actually didn't, but I was hoping you'd get into some of the geotechnic detail, because that is a huge challenge in these areas. I don't know if they've got, is it peat and things
Lots
like that
of peat
up there? So they've put these basically to kind of give it the structural strength.
Yeah. You can't see these, they're under the tarmac, but they are there. There's
but they're doing their
6
job.
or 7 of them, yeah. They're still on the old A9.
Yeah.
Still there. And work was inaugurated at the 9th milestone from Inverness on the 6th of May 1925. So that's when they had their sod cutting ceremony, where they dig a shovel in and say, "Where we go, let's get on with it." Yeah. There is a booklet in the Highland archives of this wee commemorated booklet. So
they still do this. I remember when they were doing the, I think it was a transport minister at the time, for the MA M73 M74 upgrade. There was a ceremony, and cutting the turf.
There was a little ceremony. There's a nice little marker stone on the old A9 at near Moy. So keep a look out for that.
Okay.
And work was completed on this in October 1928.
Right.
So there was about 7 or 8 contracts that made its way down from Inverness.
Yeah, so the 20s and 30s, obviously, that's the first era of the modern road building.
Yes.
In some ways, yeah. Okay. Fits in.
Exactly. So it sat like this for some time, and then after the war, traffic growth went up considerably, and there was a big review of all trunk roads, and the A9 was one that was targeted for an improvement. So the kind of issues were there was the growth in the motor traffic, an increase in tourism up to the Highlands, the oil industry at Invergordon, when that kicked off, there was a need to improve transport up there.
Of course.
The accident rate started to increase. There was a lot of incidents due to the amount of traffic using the road. There was a some incredibly long journey times between Perth and Inverness over that 115 miles of road, and it was...
I was going to say, most of this went through towns and villages.
It went through all the wee places. There was no dualling.
And there was no bypasses.
There was no bypasses. It was all pretty... There were some improvements that came in the 60s, realignments, but they were incredibly short, and they didn't really do anything to speed the road up.
The whole course of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there was a lot of poor resilience in the winter, and there was no opportunities for overtaking, going through all the wee places. I think there's a lot of people on here might remember that journey going north. Particularly my dad, who remembers going up and down that and it taking a very long time.
Yeah, well, I've had bad weather experiences on the A9 as it stands now, so I can only imagine what it was
nothing
like.
compared to what it was back
similar
then.
to the A74 sort of story.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Perth Inverness section was identified in the 1963 White Paper for Scotland's Development, and again in the 1970 plan, which basically looked at all the trunk roads and said, okay, this is one that we're going to have a look at. The initial plan of this was to basically provide short realignments and bypass some of the larger towns. So it wasn't a full reconstruction. It was, improvements, but it wasn't giving the road that we've got today. It was interesting when I read that. I went, oh right, okay, that was the initial idea. But in 1970, Mr. Gordon Campbell was elected as the Secretary of State at the Scottish Office, and he lived up in the Inverness area. He was up in the Croy area, and he was well aware of the issues of the A9, and he allocated additional funding to the A9 upgrade, and this was taken on by the Scottish Development Department. So this was taken forward as a great big project, and it was all kind of looked after by a wee team, the A9 team at the Scottish Development Department. This team was led by a chap called Garston Miller, and he became the superintending engineer. He's also in the 1980s documentary about the reconstruction. He's also in that. So
I know that film. It's very, very good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The Highland Highway.
The Highland Highway, that's what it was. Yeah. So initially 8 schemes were announced in May 1972, but by September they had got together 30 contracts making up 130 miles of new road to be constructed in this work. And this is one of the largest road projects in Scotland at the time. And it kind of still is. We've never really built anything that length and that over that distance before and since. So it's interesting that. So work got on. So we did traffic surveys along the route. So a traffic study was carried out, and it basically concluded that dualling this road could not be justified at that time.
What, purely down to what traffic
purely down to what traffic was doing. I mean, we've got the Dunkeld bypass traffic study, and it really doesn't show very high flows. We're talking 8,000 vehicles a day, which, A9 at Dromoctor was carrying that around about today, but even back then it was really not big flow. So they said, okay, we can't justify dualling the whole thing, but we need to speed the road up. So what they did they decided to construct single carriageways, but aligned in such a way to allow for the overtaking of slower vehicles. And this basically resulted in long curves being designed in to the route to allow overtaking and to allow it to kind of blend into the landscape, because they knew they were going to make quite a big impact when they built this. So they wanted it to blend in.
And I think it does quite well. I know you, Duncan, you've done some terrific work with the drone and had a look at the aerial photography, and you can actually see it's bedded in pretty well, even when looking down from the top. Yeah, you're talking about these long flowing alignments.
It's what's it called? There was a booklet that they worked on.
It's like a motorway type alignment, but single carriageway, which I think is sort of unique in some aspects.
We don't have anything like that in not even the UK. We have a road of this length constructed to that standard. Yeah. Normally we've got A75's close-ish, but it still has some substandard sections.
The A75 to me has long straights. Yeah. But the A9 has these kind of long bends. And I see what you mean.
Yeah. So it's highway link design, and it basically became the DMRB today. Yeah. So that's what that was.
The modern road, for all argument's sake. Yeah.
So the design standards were basically 60 mile an hour single carriageway with 450 metre forward sight distance to allow overtaking, gradients of up to 4%. Okay. So we're really, really setting high standards for this. The road even though it wasn't built as dual carriageway, it was designed in such a way so this can be easily upgraded to dual carriageway in the future without, building a brand new road because the old road's substandard. So it is very much just with the A9 dualing, they're just widening what's there.
Yes, is good. Although I would say that was probably something of their design standards at the time.
Yes.
Thought, it's easy. You can put another carriageway down. But there are a lot of lessons, I suppose, have been learned since the 70s and now, and requirements that have come along that might make dualing it now to standards a bit more tricky.
Yes. Yes, but the alignment is sort of there, so it's they cover themselves there. Yeah. But there were sections of dual carriageway constructed along with the road. So these were kind of put in where there was high traffic flows. So you're thinking Inverness, Perth, in the Pitlochry area. Steep gradients like at Daviot, and you've got the Dromoctor section, Killiecrankie. Yeah. Sightline issues, so where the road's quite twisty. Again, that split dual carriageway, the alignment's not great, so it is dualed up there. And of course, the later expense of building a dual carriageway, so Killiecrankie Viaducts and Tomatin is a good example where they said, we'll just build this as dual from the start to allow overtaking and so we don't have to build another big structure if we
save
want to
our grandchildren the bother.
Yeah. Basically, yeah. There was concern raised by the local authorities that if we bypass all these places, are they just going to die off and disappear?
Yeah.
So there was a bit of a discussion about this, and an agreement was made that basically said that this prohibited the building of any roadside services to protect the local services.
So there you go, folks.
There's no big
That's why there's no services on the A9. They're signed local services. Yeah.
Now there is, of course, the discussion to make was how have the towns coped with bypassing. Some of them haven't done too well. Some of them are thriving. Like you've got Aviemore, you've got Pitlochry.
Because it put them on the map.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, to a degree.
And they did actually trial a whole heap of new signs. Did you know this about local services and bypass towns and things like that? I think. Yeah.
No. It's just I know what the bypass sign looks like.
The bypass sign. I think that was a trial that they tried up here, and there was a lot of big, the big local services signs. They were also put up for the A9 to encourage people into the villages.
Right, I see.
Yeah, so that's where that comes from. So it's interesting, yeah. Another wee feature before we go into the route is there was a new type of curb designed in 1967 by the Road Research Laboratory, and it basically has small protrusions on this curb.
So these are the ribbed-looking.
These are these are known as reflector curbs, and these were basically said these are going to be the standard that we're going to use for the A9. I think they were discontinued after 1983.
Right.
So things like Killiecrankie and Blair Athol, which were later, doesn't have them.
All right, I know what they are, but I'm going to play dumb.
Okay.
But you say reflector curb, do they have like little reflectors on them?
No,
like a cat's eye?
Because concrete doesn't reflect.
Of course it doesn't. So you need to stick something to the thing. So how are they reflective? As you say,
it's essentially it casts a bit of a shadow as you're driving along, and that kind of is meant to highlight the edge of the road. That was the idea. But they ultimately didn't really work, so we never used them. They were used on the A9. They're on the M90 Kelty bypass section. They're on the A77 coming up to that, that big long straight section before you get to Prestwick Airport.
Yes,
they're along there, and there are a handful of other places as well. So keep a lookout for them.
Do you know, somebody said to me once about them, they're ribbed like that because, and talking about the reflectors, it's as a warning if you veer off the road, and it would go grrr on it.
I wouldn't want to hit them.
Yeah, and I'm thinking to myself, well, if you're hitting the curb, it's going to make a anyway.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Okay, so that's why it's cast little shadows when the headlights hit them. The reflector curb.
Reflector curb, exactly. So that's the background to the A9. Are you educated?
Yes, very.
Good.
It's good.
Yeah. So we'll head up the road and speak about all the different contracts, because there's kind of interesting things about each of these. So I'll give you a bit of detail about them.
Okay.
So this project kind of kicked off at the Broxton roundabout.
So they started in the south.
Started at the south, and that was the bottom of the project. So they made their way north from there. So it's the first section is the Perth Western Bypass.
Okay.
So that's the bit that goes from Broxton to Inveralmond roundabout. That was opened in September 1985. We have an opening booklet for this.
Yeah,
we do indeed. Tayside Regional Council, they did the design for this, and it was built by Morrison's. It was a wee bit delayed by public inquiry because I think they were quite keen to push this forward.
Because other parts of the A9 have actually been built, but it was originally going to be earlier.
Yes.
Yeah,
because remember the M90 opened in 78.
Yeah.
And then it took till 85 for it to finally have a full bypass. So they were pushing for this quite early, but it did fell into legal trouble, but we got past that. There has been some work. The A85 junction in the middle, that was actually constructed in 1987, so it was after the road was built, which I find quite interesting.
Mm-hmm. And
this has been kind of upgraded as part of the Cross Tay Link road project around there. So the junction's been modified a little bit. So there's new bits of road going off into the industrial estate and off to the new...
So what bit, just remind me again, what bit is that affecting? Is that the Armand Bridge diversion, or is it the Lunkerty bypass?
So this junction upgrade is the A85 junction on the Perth bypass.
Oh, I know what you're talking about
so
now, by the football stadium.
Yeah.
Right, I'm with you.
That's that bit. And the bits north have been affected by the Cross-Tay Link.
I was going to say there's very little of some bits left now.
Yeah, so we'll talk about them. So the next bit was the Almond Bridge diversion. So this is the first section to actually be finished in June 1975.
So is this north of Inverarmond?
This is north. This included the construction of the roundabout and about a mile and a bit of duelling.
Right.
So it didn't really make it to Lunkerty. It went over the river and then you were temporarily chucked off to the old road. We have got some construction photographs of this.
Okay.
That kind of show what was going on. Babty, Shaw and Morton were our engineers on this section. And Miller Construction built this section. And this is the first bit. This was the first bit to open in June.
Very familiar names coming in
there. This has also been modified considerably. There is now a big section of new A9 that swings off to the west, and there's a new junction put in for the Cross-Tay Link Road and Destiny Bridge that takes you off to the A93, A94. Have you seen this being built?
I have. I passed. It's very impressive. Sorry, did you call it Destiny Bridge?
That's his name, Destiny Bridge.
Why is it called Destiny Bridge?
Pass, unfortunately.
That sounds very dramatic and ominous. The Bridge of Destiny. No, I do, and that's why I'm saying with this Armand diversion. I know there is immediately north of Inverarmond. There is a bridge.
There is the
Armand Bridge. Over the Armand Bridge.
But very low down.
Very low down. You almost don't know it's there. But and then you're right. That whole road has been rebuilt now.
Pretty much as you come off the bridge, you swing off of the new alignment. So the old bit's kind of been grubbed up. So it's been removed. So going north from there, we've got Lunkerty Bypass, and this was 7th of December 1977. This officially opened. It was Babty again, and it was Miller Construction built this. And this is where the dual carriageway used to terminate, and it dropped to single carriageway for the last bit of the bypass going north. Again, this has kind of been affected by the Cross-Tay Link Road, so there's only a little bit of the original road left. The A9 duelling has kind of upgraded the rest of this, so it's kind of all duelled all the way up. But we'll talk about that in a moment. So if I flip over my page, the next section going north was Lunkerty to Burnham, and that was opened on the 11th of May 1978. Tayside Council did the design for this, and this was built by R.J. MacLeod. And this was built mostly a single carriageway, and it had that little curve of dual carriageway at the pass of Burnham.
The one that goes up the hill.
The one that goes up the hill, that was pretty much for just getting you up the hill, was that little bit of duelling. And it did bypass a very poor section of the old road under the railway line. Okay. I don't know if you've ever driven that section. It's got big signs that say danger. And you think, what's the danger? And it's just a sharp bend under the railway bridge. It's quite interesting. I've never seen anything like that otherwise. But they were quite happy when this section opened, because the accident rate dropped quite quickly. Going into the present, there was a bit of improvement works that happened here at the Bankfoot Junction. So the Bankfoot Junction was the single carriageway junction with the right turning area.
Yeah.
And that was expanded in 2009 by the Bankfoot Junction upgrade, and this was built by Highland Quality Construction for Scotland Transerve, who was looking after this and did basically the design of this. So that's the bit where they had the no U-turning signs and the red hatching and the islands that were put in.
You couldn't cross over in some sections.
You can turn right,
Yeah. So I remember when that happened, because what I presumed was because of a safety feature.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And this has all changed quite dramatically with the A9 duelling project. So the Lunkerty to Burnham section, that was opened in August 2021. It was built by Balfour Beatty, and that was part of the duelling. So it's all duelled all the way up to the end of that sharp curve.
I know, it's fantastic. It's a very high standard.
It's very high standard.
I've always found that bit there with all its bridges and so on very motorway-esque, and it is fantastic.
It's good.
I remember that pandemic happened when I remember the whole place shut that down.
The whole place came to a stop. Yeah,
it was delayed, I think, by 3 or 4 months because of that. Yeah,
it wasn't too far, but it's there now and it's fantastic.
Yeah, it is nice.
Yeah. So going back to the 70s, with the next bit going north from there is the Burnham Bypass.
Okay.
So this opened on the 30th of June 1977. It was another Babty Sean Morton section, and it was J.G. McGregor constructed this section. This is a single carriageway, and this is the section that runs past the railway station.
Oh yes.
Yeah. And it's
very beautiful.
Very nice.
Very lovely area.
Yeah. It is nice there. There was a lot of construction problems with this. There was a lot of peat that had to be dug out. They had to be careful of this because the railway embankment is built across the peat, so they had to be very careful not to subside the railway as they were building this.
It's like threading the eye of a needle going through there.
Yeah. So that's that section there. North of here, we've got quite a big section. We've got the Dunkeld Bypass.
Mm-hmm.
So this was opened on the 9th of May 1977, and there was official opening ceremony at the Tay Bridge. Okay. We've got the colour photographs of that, and we have the opening booklet. And I'd like to give a wee shout out to Ronnie Land and Robin Brown. So these were guys who were in Babty Sean Morton when the road was being built, and they've kept bits and pieces of memorabilia like the opening booklet, and they've taken photographs and brochures, and they've helped us out immensely with our research. So a special thanks.
Thanks to
them. Yeah. So it was Babty Sean Morton who designed this section, and this was built by an old contractor called Tarmac Construction, who we hear about a lot and doesn't exist anymore.
They're the ones, I believe, they eventually became Carillion,
and then they've disappeared.
They've disappeared.
So a wee bit of history about this bit. So 26 options were considered for the Dunkeld bypass. We have got the report that kind of shows them all wiggling off up the River Tay. The option that was picked required 700 metres of the River Tay to be diverted opposite Dalmarnock Farm. And this was undertaken by tractor shovels, and there was a big groin built in the river, and this was recommended in the hydraulic studies. You know what a groin is? Yes,
I in the context of road building, no. So you're going to have to help me, and probably quite a few people listening.
Best way to describe it is kind of a retaining wall that's built in the water to control the flow, basically. So they didn't want the river to say, I don't want to go on this path, and go the other way.
And start eroding and making basically its own course.
It's just to control the flow of the river. There's big groin in the river.
Yeah, no, it's fair enough, but it's very impressive redirecting. That's like almost geoengineering. Basically, it's big stuff.
There was a lot of studies done in the University of Strathclyde, which we've got the report for, that kind of says, well, we've got kind of 4 options, and they built little models, and it was really interesting. 2 crossings of the railway and also the River Bran were constructed, and the River Bran's got Corton steel beams. That's your weathering steel. You know
that's very I know weathering steel. I was going to say very early on. Yeah. Weathering steel to me is something of the late 90s. I know what we have now.
I know, yeah. And the biggest structure along there was the 225 metre Tay Bridge. Yeah. And the steelwork was done by Redpath Dorman Long. We've heard of. They built the Keswick Bridge, so they were good with steel and things. And this was quite there's a lot of photographs we've got of this, and it's the construction of the bridge was all built kind of on the north bank, and it was pushed across to the south side. There is a wee bit of video on that in the documentary. It's great to see. Wow. Fantastic to see that.
That certainly is the most striking structure on it. Yeah.
And this was undertaken in September 1976 is when they kicked this off. And this, when it opened, it actually won a Civic Trust Award in 1978 for how well they thought it blended into the landscape.
Okay. Well, that's good.
So it is. It is a good bit. I do like driving up there. It is really, really nice. You've got nice views and things, and the road does flow really well.
Yes, it
does.
Good.
Yeah. So north of there, we've got a section called Guy to Tynreich, which is basically the Dunkeld bypass to Ballinluig, for those who don't know. This opened on the 11th of May 1983. And it was Tayside Council again. It was built by R.J. MacLeod.
Yeah.
So we've got a bit of single carriageway and a bit of dualling along here to bypass.
It's quite a long section of dualling.
It was built in 2 halves, that bit. So we've got the bottom bit was part of this contract. And this includes this big bridge over the A9 carrying the A827.
Oh, okay.
And that was one of the largest single concrete pours for the bridge deck. It was 1,300 cubic metres, were all done in, I think, 2 days, 2 nights, just a continuous pour. It was a new record at the time. It was interesting, that. And it was, this had a little junction on the dual carriageway to get into Ballinluig, and there were a lot of safety concerns with this.
Went down to a 50 there.
We went down to a 50
there
with
was a speed camera there, everything good, which is a sign that it was somebody need to pay attention. Yeah,
but it was picked up as this is probably a hotspot. We need to do something with this. So 2 big northbound slip roads were put in. These big structures that go over the railway, and then there's one that does basically a big 180 and goes back down onto the road. And that was 2007.
That's right, because I just moved down to Glasgow and that was going on. Yeah, I remember that.
They're very impressive. Very impressive. We have a wee booklet about that, I think.
Well, it made it was good because you could get into Ballinluig services when you're going northbound rather than having to go across the road.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Aye.
Yeah. So going north from there, we've got Pitlochry bypass. So this opened in two phases. So from Ballinluig to, that little bit of dual carriageway at Loch Fascally that they've all hatched off.
Yes,
that bit? Yeah.
We were just talking about that before.
We were just talking about that, yeah.
Yep.
So that section was officially opened on the 19th of May 1981. I think it was Lord Mansfield, cut the tape for that bit, the Tummel Bridge.
Okay.
And the next bit, which took it up to the bottom of the Killiecrankie section, was September 1981, 2nd of September.
Okay.
So our main engineers for this was Jameson Mackay and Partners, and it was built by Balfour Beatty. So this is kind of dual carriageway going up to Pitlochry, and then it's single carriageway as we go round the town. There was a lot of environmental considerations and visual impact of the road taken into the design of this.
Okay.
Because they knew that Pitlochry was quite a sensitive area. It's quite a nice area.
Yeah.
So they wanted to kind of be quite sympathetic to the road. So there was a lot of alignment options picked, but they eventually said, let's keep it south of the river, and we'll cross the river with these with the 2 bridges there. There was a nice engineering paper written by a chap called Roy Hodgin and Chris Ford, you might have heard of.
I've heard of Roy Hodgin.
Hodgin, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, Chris Ford, yeah. And so the bridges that were chosen there was a 3-span bridge built over the River Tummel. That's just at the top of the dual carriageway section there.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was another one at Loch Fascally, and this is a 3-span bridge with the raked supports.
Yes.
So it's basically to keep the structure out of the water, because it is quite deep.
And that,
right, dam,
okay.
Yeah. And there is a nice aluminium footbridge next to that bridge. I don't know, have you been around there, John?
No, I'm just saying I'd love to go. You don't appreciate a lot of these structures when you drive over them, and it's one I'd love to go underneath and see.
It's very good. There is also the plaque underneath, and the Saltire Award as well.
I've seen that in your notes.
In 1981, they won the Saltire Award, so that's under the bridge there. So have a wee look around there. That's good fun.
No problems.
And
it's the bit you've been waiting for now.
Not done yet. Not done. There was a little bit of dual carriageway built on this for the Pitlochry Junction. So I think for the requirements of slip roads, they needed to have basically a second lane to allow traffic to move over. So there was a very small bit of dual carriageway built for that, and there were some safety issues with this. And I think once the pavement started to wear out, Scotland Transerve ripped it up and resurfaced it and basically hatched it down to 1 lane. So that's what we've got there. There just now. We do have some construction.
It was ridiculously short, because I do remember overtaking on that, and it was very, very when you could before the hatchet, it was very short.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was an impressive bit. That we do have the construction photos of the Pitlochry bypass as well, with our work with the lane collection. So they're fantastic. I love them.
Lovely.
So north of there, we've got a section known as Killiecrankie to Calveen Stage 2. Stage 1 will come in a minute, but Stage 2 is essentially the Killiecrankie Viaduct.
Yeah, I was going to say drum roll.
Yeah. So this basically includes the dual carriageway section north of Pitlochry there. And you don't actually realise this, but this is a very large structure that you're going over on the dual carriageway. So it is two viaducts next to each other there. So one southbound carriageway is 285 metres long. Northbound is 615 metres long. And there's 3 big retaining walls running along there. You would not know, because it's you've just got no views, and the trees are everywhere, but it's very impressive structure. Main engineers of this were Sir Alexander Gibb and Partners, and this was built by Tarmac Construction.
Okay.
A wee shout out here to Keith Stringer, who was the project engineer with Tarmac, so he's kept, again, a wee bits and pieces, like the opening booklet that we've got for this section, and some photographs as well. So thanks very much for him for helping out. So there was a lot of options for this section. I think they were looking at a tunnel on the west side of the pass here.
What, to just go through the rock?
Just to go through
rather
the
than
west
having
side,
this structure that's basically, it's not tagged onto the side of the rock. It isn't. But it's coming up from just next to it. But it feels that way. Yeah. Yeah.
So they said due to the other bits of the A9 connecting onto there, we'll just have to stay on the east side of the pass here. So go above the road. So there were several options proposed for the pass of Killiecrankie. There was a couple of retaining walls, big retaining walls to hold the road up, and maybe some tunnels on the west side. But these were all rejected. Basically, say visually it's going to be too much of an impact. So eventually they came up with this viaduct construction with 15-metre spans supported on hexagonal columns with rock-anchored retaining walls, and that was approved by the Royal Fine Arts Commission.
Okay.
And this was opened on the 19th of August 1986, and it was the final section of the A9 upgrade to be completed.
Oh, was it?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
So we've got the booklet for that bit as well, so that's very interesting. I do like that bit.
Yeah. I know. That's why I was like, oh, your favourite bit.
Yeah, I know. I do like it. So we go back into single carriageway, and we've got the Killiecrankie to Calveen section, but this was kind of phase one. It was meant to be done all in one go, but because of the problems with Killiecrankie, they said no, we'll just do this bit, the Blair Athol bypass first, and then we'll leave the viaduct to go its own speed, so we're not holding up the road. So they split it into two contracts basically.
Okay.
So this section bypassing Blair Athol was opened in September 1983. Again, it was Alexander Gibb and it was Tarmac who constructed this section. And there's two big bridges over the River Garry, and we go past the House of Brewer as well.
I was going to say
House of Brewer's nice.
To put anyone in perspective at House of Brewer, that's another good pit stop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it is good. I do like House of Brewer. And then north of here, we've got the Calveen to the county boundary section. So this was the longest section to build in a single contract. It was about 21 kilometres of roads. The main engineers of this was Freeman Fox and Partners. We were familiar with Freeman Fox,
Forth Road Bridge. Yeah.
And it was constructed by Tarmac again, who they did the building. So this was opened on the 7th of November 1978. So what this included was the single carriageway section, and the southbound carriageway of the dual carriageway section was opened along this section. And then they started upgrading the old A9 and opened that as the northbound carriageway in November 1979.
Oh, so this is the Dromochter
dual carriageway section.
Where it splits up. So what
it divides up, yeah.
I genuinely didn't know that.
Yeah.
That they used one of the carriageways. Which direction is the old road?
Southbound is the new construction, and northbound basically follows the old road. So there's not much of it left. Yeah.
Excellent.
It's interesting that bit.
Yeah, no, it is. It's quite a nice long section that you can kind of relax a little bit on, because you're not like, oh, this is coming to an end. Oh no, it's just spawned a camper van. Yeah, I know. Yeah,
I know. Yeah, it is good. So that was all. It was all finished in November 1979. There was a lot of rock blasting along here. I think there was about 3 million cubic meters of rock was removed, and I think this was quite a record at the time, the amount of rock that was blasted out.
Yeah,
and this went out to tender at £12 million, and it came back costing around £28 million.
Wow! So that was well over.
It was delayed by the weather. They had a lot of problems with the rock. It was a hard bit to build this, but it is a good bit.
That is bad for the way when you get towards the top, because that's when you really start gaining that elevation.
Yeah. So the dual carriageway ends, I think, about 400 metres above sea level. So it ties up at the Dromochter summit. This section here.
Mm-hmm.
So north of here we got the section from county boundary, which is basically that big sign that says "Welcome to the Highlands," or the other side that says "Welcome to Perth and Inverness." That's the old county boundary,
right?
And that runs up to the Dromochter Lodge, which sits on the southbound side of the road there. You might have seen it hidden away, that wee white building off to the side. So that was that section. This was completed around September 1982. Main design was Highland Regional Council constructed this. And Shanks and McEwen built this section of the road, but there was an advanced contract, an earthworks contract given to I&H Brown Limited, and that was finished around 1977. So that was just a bit of a widening, a bit of an improvement.
Right, okay.
So you can see why it was left a wee bit later. There was a lot of peat along here. One particular section, you know that very large lay-by heading southbound? You've got a really big lay-by that goes off, and the trucks like to sit in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I know exactly the one.
That is a section of the old road that was used. It was a diversion that was built around a big section of peat that they had to dig out, and they've just kept it as a
it's
lay-by.
very common that you see lay-bys are actually alignments of the old road.
There's a couple of them northbound as well that you'll see as the old road, so that's still there.
Okay.
So north of there we've got quite a long section that's called Dalwhinnie Bypass, or Dromocta Lodge to Crubin Moor, as it was known. Opened 20th of June 1976, and Highland Regional Council did the design again, and it was built by Tractor Shovels. Mm-hmm. Do you like Tractor Shovels? We've heard of them before.
Well, yeah, it's Edinburgh City Bypass. They also done the A92 in some sections.
Yep. So there's long sight lines along here, and there's some original surfacing.
Right,
it's been surface dressed over, but it's holding up pretty well.
So you can still see that old HRA,
old HRA underneath the surface dressing.
Fantastic.
It's very, very impressive that it's still there. So yeah, this also includes the dual carriageway section at Crubin Moor. That was built for sightline purpose, and it was extended north in 2011 by John Paul Construction to make it a bit longer.
Yes, so again, remembering that it was quite short.
Yes.
And I think they almost, not just doubled it, but over doubled the length of it when they done it, and it's quite a useful section.
It's good fun now.
Really there is
useful.
A junction in it, though, isn't there? Where you go off to the Crubin Moor.
The old road at Crubin Moor.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's still there, yeah.
Yeah.
So north of there, we've got Crubin Moor to King Eustace. Quite a long section here. Opened 10th of December 1979. So Alexander Gibb and partners were the main designers of this, and this was Bobby Fairclough Civil Engineering. Again,
heard of it. All these familiar names. Everyone was at this party.
Everyone was on this. So this has got, again, long sight lines, and you've got that mile straight section. It's called the Nudie Straight at the Nudie Bray.
This is the bit with the overtaking.
Big long straight section, and we've got the overtaking lane. That was built 2004, just to allow for safe overtaking there. And the route past Rallia Cafe, that was specifically selected to actually remove an old quarry. So they put it past you to say, well, we can get rid of this and landscape it and make it look quite nice. And that's where I think the Rallia services are, or the Rallia Cafe. That's
we've done that. We've been in that cafe once, but that's,
I'll need to give it a visit. Yeah, it does have a little slip road going northbound off the road, which I quite like. And it also crosses the River Spey on the Spey Bridge, and this is the 7-span structure that runs along a big embankment as well, and it's close to Rutherburn Barracks, which again was their General Wade history. There were pictures of this recently when there was an awful lot of rain, and you could see just the A9 going over what looked like just a big lake, but it was all flooded. It was really interesting to see.
But the A9's up on an embankment.
It's on a big embankment, yeah. It's interesting that. So north of there we've got the section King Eustace to Aviemore. 20th of September 1982, this was open. Again, this is just single carriageway bypassing there. Highland Regional Council main designers, and it was William Tawes who built this section. Now, this bit was held up by a public inquiry in September 1975. There's a lot of estates. There was a lot of the road was going to cut off a lot of accesses, so there was a bit of a delay getting this bit pushed forward. In the discussions of the public inquiry, there was an alternative route proposed, which would have followed the B970, which runs on the south side of the River Spey. Then it runs up to Aviemore, but that was discounted because it's a bit too far from Aviemore. So they said, "Well, no, we'll just keep it close to the A9."
Okay.
This has been added. The dual carriageway section has been added in here. King Craig to Dalradi as part of the dualling program, and this was built by Willis Bros and John Paul. Opened September 2017. Yeah. It's another good bit.
I remember something about that. I remember that was originally an overtaking.
Yes. That's correct.
Overtaking
lane was
scheme.
Initially, I think they were going to push for just an overtaking lane, but when the dualling kicked off, they said, "All right, well, we'll just chuck it into design. Yeah, we'll just dual it," and it is a very, very useful section of the road.
Long.
There. Yeah, it is long. Yeah,
there's a slightly split level bit at it at the southern end,
at the bottom end, where there's that big rock cutting. I think.
Yes, it's good. It is good, but it did mean the removal of an overtaking lane south of there because it was too near to the dual carriageway or some DMRB mumbo jumbo.
We're gonna have a discussion about that another time, but that was removed as part of that. Part of that works. Yeah. So north of there we've got the bypass of Aviemore. So we got Aviemore bypass. Opened 20th of August 1980. Highland Regional Council again. It was built by Tarmac, and there's a big rock blasting at Kinnackyle, which is just south of Aviemore. That's all lit up at night and it looks really, really nice. So we've got some nice features along here, and then north of here we've got a section called Granish to Avilochen. So this was a short section from, that A95 junction.
Yes.
So this little section ran for about a mile, and all it was really doing was joining up the Slough Summit section to the old A9 because the Aviemore bypass was delayed. So it was just a contract to say, we'll get this bit joined up so we can still use the road.
Use either of them, right? It's a special one that they've done. Fair enough.
So that was that small section. That opened June 1979, and it was just a connector there. And north of there, we've got quite an impressive section called Avilochen to Slough Summit.
Yeah.
Opened 29th of June 1979. Special shout out to a chap called Bob Pritchard. So it was W.A. Fairhurst and Partners who designed this section. It was built by Tarmac, and actually Cleveland Bridge and Engineering provided steel for the Dolnane and Slough bridges. So there's two very large bridges along here. You've got the railway bridge on one side. As you're going past Carbridge, you might have seen this. Just at the end of the overtaking lane, you've got a big embankment, and you've got your railway on one side. You may have seen that.
Okay.
And then you've got the bridge over the Slough Gorge, which is a very tight section to really build anything in. But they did manage to put this great big structure.
Yeah,
in there.
I know the
very
bit
impressive. Yeah, and there was big embankments and lots of rock blastings, and there was an overtaking lane along here.
Yep.
At Carbridge, that was built about 2009.
Okay.
Roughly, yeah. So the next section going north from there is Slough to Dalmagally Farm. So this, again, is another dual carriageway section. This opened 17th of November 1976. Main designed by W.A. Fairhurst and Partners, and it was built by Wattlings. And it was Fairfield Maybe, provided steel for the Findhorn Bridge, this great big structure that goes over the River Findhorn alongside the railway line there. It's a 5-span viaduct, 249 metres long, and we've got the photographs of this being built. These are fantastic. You've got the girders coming out.
This is very much your parts of the A9 up here.
I do like it.
I always call this the quiet A9. After the A95 junction, heading north, it does seem to taper off quite a bit in traffic.
Yeah, it does get quiet. I find it does get quite quiet. A couple of the features of this section here. There was a 1/4 mile of porous asphalt laid on the southbound carriageway at the Slough Summit.
Porous asphalt.
And this was a trial, and it was removed in 1978 due to a considerable amount of frost damage. So it didn't last very long, but they wanted to see 1,300 feet above sea level, so it didn't last very long. But it's interesting to know that. And there was also there was a concrete raft at the Slough Summit that was removed as part of this works for the old road. And so there is an engineering paper out there about the removal of this, and they actually found it was actually pretty good quality of construction. It was holding up very well, so it was interesting to see that.
Good.
Yep. So north of there, we've got the Dalmagally to Bogbane section completed around April 1979. It would be good to get an exact date for this section here. W.A. Fairhurst and Partners again, and it was William Tawes Limited built this bit. There was a lot of peat encountered, and there was large areas of blasting needed to go down. It drops altitude quite dramatically and then climbs back up again at Daviot. And then there was an overtaking lane put here at Moy in 2009. So this is quite a well-known section. So we've got a bit of single carriageway. Most of this was dualled just because of the steep gradients.
Yeah, I was going to say to help with HGVs going up and down.
Yeah. I would like to give a wee shout out here to Ross Gray at Fairhurst. And he allowed us into the archive to have a little look around for drawings. We've been working with Bear Scotland to try and improve the drawings, and we found some, and we also got construction photographs of this section as well, and a whole heap of other stuff. So special thanks to him for letting us roam around the archive at Fairhurst in Edinburgh.
Well, that's great. It's only for a good thing.
Yep, exactly. And then the next section from Bogbane to Longman Roundabout was open 12th of November 1977. Construction photos of this bit are available in the Highland archives. They're great. I do like them. It was Crouch and Hogg designed this section. It was Fairclough Civil Engineering built this section.
Okay. So
this is all dual carriageway,
which includes the big mighty Raigmore
interchange. Yeah. So there's steep descents at the hills, and there's dual carriageway, and there's that Raigmore interchange. Very impressive.
Which is where you meet the A96.
Yeah, check out the A96 podcast for more information on that. Just plugging some things here. I know, yeah. And we've got the Inches Junction as well, which was improved not long after it opened in 1981. They built the bridge over the road there, and this connects up to the Longman Roundabout at the bottom of the Keswick Bridge.
Oh yes, the Sheriff Hall of the North.
Sheriff Hall of the North, exactly.
Yeah.
So we've already spoken about the section north of here in our Keswick Bridge podcast.
We have.
So I thought, because we've not discussed it, we'd go north across the Black Isle. There was a new road constructed across the Black Isle as part of the Three Firths work and the Three Firths study. And this A9 upgrade took that new route across the Black Isle, and it ended, the last section going north is Cromarty Bridge.
Yeah, these are really cool if you haven't been on them. And you're right,
Cromarty
it
Bridge,
kind of it cuts the corner, doesn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So the Cromarty Bridge was built as part of this work. Officially opened 12th of April 1979, and we do have the opening booklet for it. Well, the very small opening booklet, but it did have a booklet, and we've got a lot of construction photographs for that, thanks to Norman Smart and Don Fraser. They were involved with the construction of the bridge.
So many contributors to this project. It's fantastic. I know. Thank you.
So Crouch and Hog did the design of this, and it was Fairclough Civil Engineering built it. Now, this is how many? Do you want to have a guess? How many piers the Cromarty Bridge has?
How many? I wish I knew this because I could surprise you. How many piers does it have? I don't know. 198.
No, 67 piers.
All right. Oh, okay. I was way over. Right.
Precast piers holding up the Cromarty Bridge. 21.5 meter spans going over the river there. This was initially proposed as a large causeway running across the Cromarty Firth with small openings for the river channel, but due to this would kind of alter the way the Firth looks and works with the tidal flow. So they said, we'll open it all up and build this big long bridge over the Firth. And there is a nice documentary about the construction of this on the Scottish Screen Archive. Great little watch. It basically goes into how the bridge was built and how the procedure for the construction of it. So it's very interesting. I highly recommend it.
No, it does.
And that is the top of the A9 upgrade. That's as far as this big project went. We obviously had improvements up the Dornoch Bridge, but that's as far as this project went. So yeah. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention, I don't think I mentioned it, is that all the laybys between Perth and Inverness, they were all given a number.
When did they do that?
I think it was when the road was finished. Or it was not long after.
Yeah, because I noticed that's lay-by 59, and then and we're all hoping that somebody has a record of what these are, and then if somebody breaks down and says, I'm here, you know where it is. It's
basically identification notifications for the...
Because you don't have a marker post system.
So it's just to say, I'm in lay-by 52, and they go, oh, that's about there.
Yeah.
So lay-by 1... What it was down at Perth, that's been removed, and it kind of kicks off at Dunkeld, and it runs up to 202, which is just at the northern end of the Cromarty Bridge there.
Your favourite lay-by? Would it be? I'd probably say lay-by 94.
I like lay-by 22.
Oh, okay.
Lay-by 22 is a good one.
You're not going to tell us why, but there we go. Everyone will go there, and fair enough.
So there you go. Okay. So that's the upgrade. So at the moment, we have the A9 duelling, which is going on at the moment.
Yes.
So current progress, we've got the Tomatin to Moy section, which will be kicking off later this year. And we've also got the Tay crossing to Ballinluig section that'll be kicking off.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So they're stopping just short of the big bridge.
Yeah, basically. So if you want more detail about this, check out the Transport Scotland website, and there's also the A9 duelling website as well, which is fantastic. That's got a lot of information.
Loads of visualizations.
Lots of little graphics as well.
I think they've put out some. There's been a bit of an update with programs and all that sort of stuff. So there's new info there. If you've not looked at this for a while, it's cool.
Yeah, check that out. You can also sign up for updates for the newsletters. They're fantastic. Yeah,
cool.
So back to the archiving. So it was. Back in November, it was 50 years since the construction began on this project, and we thought we'd commemorate it.
Of course we did.
So coming soon, around about the time this podcast is released, hopefully, there is a booklet coming out, basically, that has all this information and more, and photographs, that will be available for you to pick up. And it's a bit of a revisit as well.
So we're selling this on the site. I think this is going to be our biggest one, is it not?
Yeah, I think so. I think it is.
Yes. That's it. Brilliant.
So, I've been looking forward to this. I've been looking at the A9 for blooming ages. But
it's been your life's work.
Now we can get it into a booklet, and I can finally retire. There we go.
Fantastic.
There you go. So, John, have you got any more questions about the A9?
No.
Before we finish off, because this has been a bit of an info dump. This, but hopefully
it has. I'm sitting here slightly shell shocked by it all, but no. I have heard quite a bit about this. I know you've been on a huge journey about it, and I think when people listen to this podcast, I've just wanted to hear you give these facts. And you know what? You've done it very well, and it's been fantastic, and I hope everyone listening to this has enjoyed it as much as I have listened to you there. So, no, that's it. Well, I suppose without any further ado, it's the usual to obviously thank Andy and the team at Eastford Excavations and Nigel and his guys at HBS for allowing this to be possible. supporting all this. Thank you very, very, very much.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, we've got more. Check them out on Spotify, YouTube, Podbean. We've also got the website, and there is the A9 webpage on there as well, which has got a whole heap of information on it.
It's going to be a big page.
It's going to be a big page. It's got it's got lots of information. It's got lots of photos. It's got some booklets on there. Check it out. I recommend it.
Excellent.
So, John, thank you very much. If you've got nothing else, thanks for listening.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers,
Goodbye.
Duncan. Bye-bye.